I always thought the worst thing my family ever did was pretend I didn't exist. Turns out, I was wrong. The worst thing they ever did was remind the entire world of my existence, only so they could humiliate me publicly on my sister's wedding day. My name is Paige Harper Wilson. I'm 33 years old. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in Tacoma, Washington. And this is the story of the day my family tried to bury me alive, and the day I finally climbed out of the grave and walked away. I didn't go to the vineyard to cause trouble. I went because, for the first time in 8 years, I wanted to believe my family still had a small space reserved for me, even if it was just in the back row, even if all they gave me was a chair with my name spelled wrong. But when I pulled up to the iron gates of Davenport Ridge Vineyard, the most exclusive wedding venue in Northern California, what greeted me was not a seat. It was a 6-foot banner with my driver's license photo blown up like a mugshot. The words, "Trash Not Allowed," in dripping red letters. And the moment I saw it, I understood exactly what my family thought of me. I also understood that they had no idea what I was capable of now. People like to pretend catastrophes happen suddenly. A single moment, a single decision, a single mistake. But mine started slowly, like water leaking under a door. I didn't know I was drowning until I was already underwater. 8 years ago, I was a rising star. 26 years old, fresh MBA, financial analyst for a nationally recognized retail chain. A salary that made my parents glow like they had engineered me in a lab. To them, my success wasn't something to be proud of. It was something to show off. My mother, Diane Wilson, was one of those women who loved status the way normal people love air. My father, Richard, was a country club real estate guy who wore golf polos like a uniform and measured success by who knew your name. And then there was my younger sister, Grace, the golden girl, the pretty one, the soft one, the one everyone protected, usually at my expense. I supported her through college, paid half her tuition when she lost her scholarship, helped her get her first apartment, covered her medical bills during a health scare she didn't tell Mom about. I did everything an older sister is supposed to do. And when I married Evan, a software engineer who seemed gentle and attentive and grounded, my family acted like they'd won the lottery. Photographs, parties, dinners. My daughter married a tech engineer. My oldest is a finance genius. The moment they loved me most was the same moment I stopped noticing they only loved me when I was useful. Everything fell apart 2 years later. Evan wasn't gentle. He wasn't grounded. He wasn't faithful. He was ambitious, and I was the easiest piece to sacrifice. He manipulated numbers, pushed purchases into my department, blurred lines that should never have been blurred. And when the company discovered the inconsistencies, he didn't protect me. He used me as the shield. My career was destroyed in 1 week, my reputation in 2, my marriage in 3. When I went to my parents' house, still shaking from the HR meeting, my father didn't even invite me inside. He stood there at the door and said, "Paige, you're old enough to deal with your own mess." My mother didn't speak at all. She couldn't risk her friends at the club hearing that her daughter was getting investigated. Grace? She unfollowed me on Instagram less than 24 hours after the news broke. I went from 6-figure salary to night shift at a distribution center in 90 days. I wasn't Paige the achiever anymore. I wasn't Paige the promising daughter. I became the one thing my family fears most, a visible imperfection. For almost 3 years, I didn't hear from them. Not a call, not a message, not even a holiday card. They erased me so fully that sometimes I wondered if I'd imagined having a family at all. Then, out of nowhere, Grace called. Her voice was soft, trembling, sugar-sweet. The same voice she used when we were kids and she wanted me to take the blame for something. "Paige, I need your help." She was getting married to Ethan Davenport, heir to the Davenport wine fortune. Old money, political money, money that has its own zip code. The wedding deposit alone was $78,000, and she needed help covering the remainder. Of course, she came to me. I was still the fixer in her mind, the older sister who would bleed for her. What she didn't know was, my grandmother had passed away 2 months earlier and left me a private inheritance my parents knew nothing about. I could afford the deposit, barely, but I could. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I was part of the family again. I transferred the money. I signed the contract. My name was the only one on the agreement, which meant something very important later. And then, silence. No updates. No thank you. No invitations to cake tastings, dress fittings, venue tours. On Instagram, I saw photos of my parents with Grace and Ethan at the vineyard, at bridal boutiques, at engagement parties. Every picture had 4 smiling faces, never 5. And still, I tried to convince myself they would want me there. I bought a dress, took the day off work, practiced how to pretend I wasn't hurt if they sat me in the last row. Nothing could have prepared me for the banner. The massive banner with my blown-up ID photo, the words, "Trash not allowed." My mother standing proudly beside it like she had approved the font choice. My father pretending not to see me. Grace smirking like she had finally put me in my place. She walked up to me in her $14,000 Vera Wang gown and whispered, "You really thought you were invited?" Something in me snapped so quietly I didn't hear it until later. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the banner, and texted the one person who had never turned her back on me. Cheyenne, my oldest friend, a contract attorney who had advised me to keep every copy of the venue agreement. I sent her the picture and wrote, "Do it." And then I walked away. I expected to cry on the drive out, to shake, to scream, to wonder if I'd gone too far. But I felt nothing. Just a cold, clean quiet settling into a place inside me that had been screaming for years. Cheyenne called me immediately. "Once I send this notice, there is no coming back." I know. This will end the wedding. I know. This will expose what they did to you. Good. Section 14B of the contract, the one I signed, stated that any harassment, dignity violation, or defamation by the clients or their families gave the signing party, me, the right to immediately terminate the event with no refund, and the venue would enforce it with full legal authority. Cheyenne submitted the termination notice with photographic proof. The gates locked within 22 minutes. 390 guests stranded outside. No shade, no access to the main building, no staff allowed to serve them. Vineyard policy. I sat on the hood of my car at a highway overlook and watched the hills shimmer in the sun as my phone began to explode. "What did you do? Open the gates right now! Paige, you are ruining your sister's life! This isn't you! Please answer! Don't do this! Paige, I'm begging you, please fix it!" For years I had begged them. Now they finally understood the sound. But the wedding being canceled wasn't the part that broke the Davenports. Not even close. Cheyenne had something else. During Grace's bachelorette weekend in San Francisco, she had disappeared into a hotel elevator with her fiancé's brother. Not just disappeared, been filmed. Cheyenne had the footage, time-stamped, clear faces, clear actions, no ambiguity. She had never planned to use it, but after the banner, after the humiliation, after my sister looked me in the eyes and called me trash, I gave her the green light. She sent it directly to the groom with the simple message, "Before you make a mistake." Within minutes, lives began to implode. Grace screaming, Ethan shouting, the Davenport family threatening lawsuits, guests filming everything, influencers live streaming the meltdown. My mother sobbing that she can't breathe. My father yelling into a phone so loudly his voice cracked. And me? I sat there, finally breathing normally for the first time in years. From the moment the banner went up, I stopped being their victim. I was done begging for a seat at a table that had been set against me since I was old enough to pour my own cereal. I blocked every number, every message, every guilt trip disguised as love. I packed what little I owned, sold the rest, took the small inheritance I had left, and moved to Washington State. Fresh air, new city, no ghosts. I found a job in operations management at a logistics company in Tacoma. Not glamorous, not perfect, but honest, safe, mine. I bought new furniture, new clothes, new dishes, things I chose, not things I inherited from the version of me who used to trust people who didn't deserve it. For the first time in my life, every decision I made belonged only to me. My parents' world collapsed. The Davenports withdrew their support. The country club quietly removed them from multiple committees. The house was sold at a loss after legal fees and penalties drained them dry. Grace lost the wedding, the fiancé, the reputation, the social circle. Everything she weaponized against me. She moved back in with my parents. Her engagement ring, worth more than my car, was seized in arbitration. My mother sent me long, rambling emails about how families should stick together, and we were under a lot of stress, and you know your sister has emotional needs. I didn't reply. My father texted me an apology so formal, it looked like a press release. I didn't reply to that either. When you stop accepting crumbs, you stop starving. And when you stop starving, you stop letting people feed you poison. Today, I wake up in a quiet apartment with clean sheets and no screaming voices in the walls of my memory. I make my own coffee, take my own car to a job I earned honestly, walk into a workplace where nobody knows who my family is or what they think of me. I have friends who like me because I'm kind, not because I'm useful. I have coworkers who respect me because I show up, not because I'm perfect. And I have peace. A kind of peace I didn't know existed when I was breaking myself to earn love from people who had none to give. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the black sheep, the scapegoat, the fixer, the forgotten one, the one expected to sacrifice everything and receive nothing, hear me clearly. Walking away is not betrayal. Walking away is survival. Walking away is the beginning of the life you were meant to have long before anyone convinced you that you didn't deserve it. I am Paige. I am not trash. And I'm finally free. I thought that once I left California behind, once I cut the last thread tying me to the people who had shaped and shattered me, Healing would arrive like a sunrise, slow, soft, inevitable. But healing is not gentle. Healing is messy. Healing is inconvenient. And nobody warns you that once you walk away from the people who hurt you, you still have to walk towards someone else, yourself. That was the part that terrified me the most. My first weeks in Tacoma felt almost fake, like I was a glitch in someone else's life. Like any moment, I would wake up back in my tiny San Jose apartment with unpaid bills stuck under the microwave and my phone buzzing with my mother's voice saying, "Paige, you need to think about how your actions reflect on this family." But mornings in Tacoma were quiet, beautiful even. My apartment faced the harbor, and the first thing I saw every day were the silhouettes of fishing boats sliding across the gray-blue water, and seagulls circling like tiny white question marks. For the first time in years, nobody needed anything from me. Nobody demanded explanations. Nobody blamed me for things that weren't my fault. It was unsettling in a way I hadn't expected, to have peace and not know how to sit inside it. For a long time, I didn't know what to do with all the space inside my life that used to be filled with other people's noise. One rainy Thursday, I wandered into a small coffee shop after work. There was a flyer taped crookedly to the door. Support group for adult children of narcissistic families. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers traced the edges of the paper. I didn't even realize I was crying until the barista behind me said softly, "If you're thinking about going." It helped me. I didn't ask her how. I just nodded, bought a latte I didn't drink, and went home with that flyer folded in my pocket. The next Wednesday, I sat in my car outside the building for 20 minutes, arguing with myself. You don't need this. You handled your family on your own. You're fine now. You survived. You're over it. But my hand moved on its own when I reached for the door handle. Inside, a circle of strangers sat in mismatched chairs, sipping tea from chipped mugs. A woman named Marla, mid-50s, soft voice, tired eyes, gestured to an empty seat and said, "Sit wherever feels right." I didn't speak the first meeting, or the second, or the third. I listened to stories that felt like echoes of my own, to women and men who had been called ungrateful, dramatic, selfish for daring to want basic respect, to people who had been scapegoated, gaslit, or quietly erased by their own blood. For the first time in my life, I felt seen without having to perform for it, loved without having to earn it, understood without needing to explain myself. Halfway through the fourth session, Marla asked gently, "Paige, would you like to share anything today?" My throat ached. My hands shook. But I nodded, and when I began speaking, the words poured out of me like someone had turned a faucet I didn't know existed. "My family wrote me out," I said quietly. "And then they only remembered me when they needed money." People didn't recoil. They didn't judge. They just listened. And I didn't know healing could feel like that. My operations job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, predictable, healthy. The shift managers didn't treat me like a liability. My coworkers were honest, hardworking, and, unlike the tech startup crowd I used to know, they said exactly what they meant. On my first week, my supervisor, Emily, a tall blonde woman with sleeve tattoos and a dry sense of humor, looked at my resume and said, "You're overqualified, and that scares me." Then she grinned and added, "But if you're here to work, I'm here to push you." Emily pushed me all right. She gave me projects that required strategy, team management, logistics design, budget planning. Skills I thought were dead inside me began to wake up. One night, after we finished reorganizing an entire loading zone in a storm that soaked us to the bone, Emily leaned against a stack of crates and said, "Have you ever thought about applying for an operations director role? At corporate?" I froze. Corporate? Me? After everything? "I'm not that person anymore," I murmured. Emily shook her head. "You're more than that person now. Anyone can climb when the ladder is steady. But the ones who climb after falling off?" She tapped my shoulder. "They're the ones worth hiring." I went home that night and stared at myself in the mirror. Not the old Paige, the ambitious, sharp-edged woman with perfect suits and perfect posture and a life curated for public consumption, but the newer version of me, a woman who had been buried alive and dug herself out with her bare hands. On a cold Sunday morning, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I hadn't blocked yet. My sister. Grace. "Paige, please, I need to talk to you. Not for me, for Mom." I stared at the words for minutes. I didn't respond. 6 hours later, another message came through. Grace. "Dad's in the hospital. Mom says it's your fault she's so stressed. Can you at least call?" A familiar guilt began to crawl up my spine. But then I remembered the banner, the smirk, the red letters, the humiliation, and the way she had begged me for money only to erase me again once she got what she wanted. I closed the message and put my phone face down on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't wonder if I had made the wrong choice. I felt calm. Because guilt is only heavy when you believe you owe someone something. And I owed them nothing. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not for my parents, not for Grace, for myself. "Dear Paige, you're not abandoning anyone. You are walking away from a fire that they kept dragging you into. You are not the villain of this story. You are the survivor." I folded the letter and placed it inside a book on my nightstand. A reminder. 3 months into therapy, Emily stormed into my office area and said, "Corporate wants to interview you next Friday. Don't argue, just go." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Are you serious? You're the best manager I've had in years. Stop acting shocked." So I went. The interview panel was intimidating. 2 directors, a VP, and someone from HR who looked like she could smell insecurity. But I didn't pretend to be anything. I told them the truth. I'm rebuilding my life, and I'm good at building things from the ground up. They exchanged glances. Not skeptical, impressed. 3 days later, HR emailed me. "Offer pending. Please schedule a follow-up call." My chest tightened. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone. Emily saw me from across the warehouse and shouted, "If you don't tell me you got the job in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to assume you did." I burst into tears right there, in the middle of forklifts and metal racks. Not because the job defined me, but because it symbolized something I never thought I'd have again. A future. The night I signed the offer, I called Cheyenne. She didn't say hello. She screamed. "You're back! Do you understand what this means? You rose from the ashes like a whole phoenix with a degree!" I laughed so hard I dropped the phone. Cheyenne flew to Washington 2 weeks later, and we celebrated with cheap champagne on my balcony. But then she grew quiet. You know they're going to reach out again when they find out you're successful. I know. Are you ready for that? I paused. Yes, I said finally. Because they don't get access to me anymore. Not even the version they think they remember. Cheyenne raised her glass. To the peace they can't take away again. We drank to that.